All right then, guys, starting off with a pie chart question. Here we go. It doesn't say anything about it not being drawn to scale, so it's not going to hurt to just measure all the angles. So I've grabbed my protractor, and as you can see, I've measured all of these. So this is 20 degrees, 40, 60, 80, 140. How do I know they're all right? Because I checked it in my calculator, and they equaled 360. All right, we also have below a pictogram, 4 pairs of glasses, so we know 4, half of them would be 2, so this one would be 6. Okay, let's have a little look at the question then. First one. For each shop, what fraction of the sunglasses sold last week was sold on Friday? Express your answers, fractions in their simplest form. So for this first place, which was given in our pie chart, Friday we can quite clearly see as the 80 degrees. How am I going to write that as a fraction? 80 over 360. But we got to simplify it. So 80 over 360, the quickest way to simplify that would be divided by 40, or what you could do, press a fraction button, type 80 over 360, press equals, and boom, sorted for you, 2 over 9. Next one, Arthur Avenue. So we're going to use the pictogram this time. So Arthur Avenue, a little bit trickier. We need to find out how many sunglasses were sold in total. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 14 and a half. Okay, so 14 and a half pairs, so it's going to be 14 and a half times by 4, because each one represents 58 sunglasses. Let's double check I got that there. Yes, I did. 58 in total out of 14 were on the Friday. Friday, 4, 8, 12, plus the other 2. And then how am I going to simplify that? You could just do exactly what I just showed you on a calculator, and it gives you 7 over 29. Okay, lovely jubbly. Next one, Arthur Avenue. What percentage of the sunglasses sold last week was sold on Tuesday? So we've got to find out how many sold on Tuesday first, which was 8 out of all of these, which we actually found in the previous question. 8 out of 58. So then how am I going to find that as a percentage? Well, it's 8 over 58. 8 over 58 times 100. You can do that in your calculator. Okay, literally to make it look the same, 8 over 58 times 100, and boom, that gives you that fraction. We don't like that. We'll press the SD button, and then I'm going to round that to 13.8 or 13.79. Don't forget your percentage sign. Okay, and last but not least, very similar method. How many more sunglasses were sold in Furoin shop than Arthur Avenue? So we need to find out how many were sold on a Saturday. Now, we know all of this is equal to 90 pairs, but on Saturday it was 140. 140 out of what? 360. So to find out how many were sold on a Saturday at the one in the pie chart, it's got to be 140 out of 360 this time, times by 90, because the whole pie chart is equal to 90, and that gives me 35 sold. Saturday for the other one, Arthur Avenue, 4, 8, 12, 16. So how many more were sold? 35, take away the 16, 19 sold. Okay, 5 marks for that one there, so you're going to get 2 marks just for having 140 over 360 times 90, and then the second mark for the 35. Third mark here, 16, taken away or attempting to take them away, and your 5th mark for the final answer of 19. Okay, now it's a better value or best value for money question again. A little bit tricky this time because the numbers, you can't make the quantities the same until you realise that this is in kilograms and this is in grams. So I'm going to change this to 1,000 grams. So can I get either 1,000 down to 450 or maybe 450 up to 1,000? There's loads of different ways you can do it, but remember, you just got to make the quantities the same. What I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can get 450, the cost of 450, up to 1,000. So we already know that is the cost of 1,000 grams here, 57 pence. So if I go to Supermart, I know 450 grams is 27p. So I'm thinking, how could I find maybe 1 gram? Well, to find 1 gram, if 450 grams are 27p, I would do the 27 pence divided by 450, because that's how many grams there are. Gives me a really small number, 0.06. So that just tells me it is 0.06 pennies for 1 gram, which makes sense. It's really, really light. So it is going to be really cheap. But now to get this to 1,000, which is what I said here, well, I simply times that by 1,000, which is going to give me 60 pence. Remember, you've got a calculator, so use one. So now I know 1 kilogram here is 60p, 1 kilogram here is 57p. Which one is best value for money? Obviously, Fairmart is 3p cheaper. Okay. All right. So we know these ingredients would serve 4 people, and we got to somehow get 4 up to 25. So you could see how many 4s get you to 25. So you could do 25 divided by 4, which is 6.25. It's not very nice. And then you would times all of these by 6.25. Or maybe a way which might seem a little bit easier to you. Find out how much it costs for 1 person. So how much you need for 1 person. And then once you know that, which I've done here, you can times them all by 25. Okay. So 4 people, 450. Well, how did I get 112.5? Remember, you've got a calculator. All of these are what you need for 4 people. So if you divide them all by 4, that'll tell you how much you need for 1 person, which gives me all of these numbers here. And then all I got to do is multiply every single one of these numbers after by 25. Okay. And then you should get the answers of 2,812.5 for the carrots, 5 litres of stock, 25 tablespoons of cream, 12.5 whole onions. Okay. Edmund does not want part of an onion left over, complete the recipe. So just made a little note here that you would have to make carrot soup for either 24 or 26. Okay, now this serves 25, don't need a whole onion. So because it says whole in bold, you can either round that to 13, or you can make a note down the bottom here saying exactly what I've said here, that it's either for 24 or 26. Okay. Because obviously half an onion serves 1 extra person. Right then, time zones. Be really careful with time zones, because time, remember, is out of 60. If it's minutes or hours, minutes or seconds, and then if it's hours in a day, we know it's 24. When it is 23:30 on Saturday in St. Asper, what time of day is it in Montreal? So let's find out the difference between St. Asper and Montreal. Now, the minutes remain the same. What can we see? Montreal is 5 hours behind. So if St. Asper then is the one we're starting with, we know Montreal will be 5 hours behind that. So we take 5 away from 23. It leaves me with 18:30 Saturday. Okay. Nice one to start with. Next one's a bit trickier though. It says when it is 1, now that is 1 a.m. on a Sunday in Sydney. What time of day is it in St. Asper or whatever, I don't know. So Asper. Sydney, we can see here is 21:30. And then St. Asper is 12:30. So they are actually behind now, 9 hours behind Sydney, or Sydney and 9 hours in front. So with that in mind, if it's 1 o'clock in the morning, we need to subtract 9 hours. Well, take away 1 hour would take you to midnight on the Saturday, effectively. So you're going back into Saturday now, not Sunday, and then take off the rest, which is another 8 hours, takes you down to 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon. Okay, so 1600 hours Saturday, not Sunday. Okay. Next one, exchange rates. Australian dollar is, so it's a bit different now. This is 1 Aussie dollar is equal to 61 pence. So it's not £1, so they mixed it up. How much is 320 worth? So to find out how much 320 is worth, then we actually need to do 320 divided by 0.61, okay? And then it says, give your answer to the nearest dollar. Well, the nearest dollar is round to 525 Aussie dollars. So you've got to divide by the exchange rate. How do you know that makes sense? Well, if 1 Australian dollar is worth 61p, Australian dollars are always going to be a bigger number because 1 is bigger than 0.61. Okay, 320 is smaller than 525, so that makes sense. All right, got to make sense of this, guys. Hire any pair of ice skates for £3.25 and then £2.40 for every hour or per hour. So it doesn't really matter how long you go over the hour. If you go over the hour, it's charged as a full hour. Bryn gets them for 3 hours and 38 minutes. Well, 3 hours and 38 minutes is actually 4 hours, guys. So you do 4 hours times £2.40 because it's £2.40 for every hour, which is £9.60. But then don't forget, you've got to add on the £3.25 after, because that's a fixed charge, because you answer £12.85. Okay, 1 mark for £9.60, 1 mark for £12.85. Next one, Beth pays £8.5 to hire ice skates. What is the minimum whole number of minutes that she could have hired the ice skates before returning them? So what we're going to do here, if it costs her £8.5 and we know the fixed charge was £3.25, let's take that away first. So I'm going to take off the £8.5 and the £3.25. That leaves me with £4.80. So £4.80 is how many hours she hired it for. Well, what do you notice? It's £2.40 for every hour. So if it's £2.40 for every hour, she's actually paid for 2 hours. Okay? So we know she's paid for 2 hours, but the question actually said, what is the minimum whole number of minutes that she could have hired the ice skates for before returning them? So the minimum, the very, very minimum, remember, it said in the question, if you go slightly over, it says by here, if you go slightly over the next hour, it just rounds up. 61 minutes would still be charged as 2 hours. 60 minutes wouldn't, so the minimum minutes would be 61. Okay, so third mark's a bit trickier, but hopefully you can get to there for 2 marks. All right. Question 1 then, how far away from the sports centre do you live? Why would this potentially not be a useful question? Well, I've written because people who live further away are less likely to use the sports centre. Or you could also say it doesn't give any units of measurement. So we could be talking miles, meters, kilometres. We have no idea, so you may not put down there. Okay, so either one of them two. Next one, how often do you go swimming? Well, the obvious one there is weekly, daily, monthly, yearly. There's no time frame, okay? So there's no specific interval of time. All right, next one. A person answers that they go swimming. Write a question that could be used to find out how long this person spends in the pool on average each time they go. You must give groups to collect the data. So that means we got to give effectively tick boxes. So how many hours, that's the key bit, hours do you spend in the pool each week? So you don't have to write hours in week. You could write hours per day. You could write hours per month, hours per year, but you've got to have some sort of time frame. Less than 1 hour, 1 to 3 hours, more than 3. Okay? That's going to get you an extra 2 marks. Right then, use the graph to answer the following questions about the temperature of the water between 8 and 11. So between there and there. Here's the temperature. What is the range? Oh, bless me. Highest takeaway, lowest. Okay? Of the temperature of the water. So if you look at our graph, where's the highest, where's the lowest? So I'm going to get my ruler and zoom in. The highest is obviously the highest point, which is here. So the highest point goes to there. And then the lowest point is obviously by here, which goes to there. That's why I put those 2 dashes there. Now it's about your scale. 25 and 30, you've got 10 little squares. So each square's worth 0.5, or every 2 is going up in. 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. So that there is at 28. If you're really careful with the scale, this here then is 2 below, so it'll be at 24. So the range is between 28 and 24. Your answer of 4 degrees. Okay, for the next question. For swimming, the most suitable temperature of the water is between 27 and 28. Now we already know from when I done it here, 28 was the highest. So we know it doesn't go hotter than that. Find the length of time that the water in the pool was most suitable for swimming. So we've got to give our answer in minutes. Between 27 and 28. So let's have a little look. Here's 28, we're okay with that, but where's 27? Let's find it. 27 is going to be there, 2 squares below 28. So all I'm going to do is use my ruler, look across my ruler, until I get to my graph. And as you can see, I did already draw a red line on it. So it's this part by here. Okay, now we want to find out from here to here, because this is between 27 and 28 degrees, how long did it stay like that? So what I'm going to do to make it a bit easier is just draw lines down. So I've now got to find out how long is it between there and there. So we've got to be quite good with our scale. Now, if we look between 10 and 11, that's obviously 10:30, because it's in between 10 and 11. So if there are 10 little squares between past and 11, it's going up in, because obviously 30 minutes is the difference between here and here. Each little square is worth 3, 33, 36, 42, 45, 48, and then 51, 54, 57, and eventually we end up at 60. 11 o'clock is quite hard to see on here. So what is the gap between here and here? Well, from there to there is obviously half an hour, because we can figure that out using the current scale. So from there to there is half an hour, then it's an extra 2. It's actually going to be another 3 and 3, which is 6 minutes. So in total, it's 36 minutes, okay? And I just made a little note there. How did I find out it was going up in 3s? Okay, a little bit tricky that for 1 mark. All right. So Venn diagrams, and hopefully you all know the concept of a Venn diagram. Let's have a look at the first one. How many of these supporters' journeys included travel by both train and taxi? So we know we're looking at anything in the taxi circle. We know we're looking at anything in the train circle. So that means anything above those 2 circles, we ignore. So if I just imagine this knot there, I'll zoom right in. I'll cut off the other 2. So we're looking at anything in this circle and anything in this circle. But it says how many of these supporters included travel by both train and taxi. So because it's both train and taxi, it's got to be where this circle overlaps with this circle. So we know we can only look now in these 2 parts, because by here where the 3 is, then this circle doesn't overlap it. And by here where the 24 is, this circle doesn't overlap it. So how many done both? It's the 7 here and the 1 here, which gives me the answer of 8, okay? Although a lot of you would probably put 7. Be careful, because here and here includes train and the taxi. Next one, how many of these supporters' journeys include travel by car? So because it's by car, you've got to look at the whole circle and ignore the rest. So just focus on what's in that circle and add them all up. Gives me an answer of 180. Last one, calculate the percentage of the number of supporters in the survey whose journeys did not include travel by either of these. So if they did not include travel by either of these, that's simply these 15. But how many were there in total? When I got to add up every single number, you got a calculator, take your time. So how many of them was a percentage? Well, it's 15 out of 403. 15 divided by 403 times by 100. And it gives you the answer of 3.7. So for 1 mark, 15, your other mark, 403, third mark for attempting to find it as a percentage, dividing and times by 100, and then your last mark for 3.7. All right. For 2 significant figures then, how did I get this here? Well, to round to 2 significant figures, you look at the first digit bigger than 0, which is the 7. So then the second significant figure is the 1, okay? So that's your cutoff point, and then 71,000 would round up to 72, because of that 5 there is obviously halfway. Next one then. The rugby pitch at the stadium is measured. On the diagram below, each measurement is given correct to the nearest 10 centimetres. So now you see this, I'm hopefully thinking that you would remember its upper or lower bounds. So if something is rounded to the nearest 10 centimetres, remember, halve whatever it's rounded to, and that's what, so it just would be 5 centimetres. That's what you can add or subtract from the measurement given, and that'll tell you the biggest and lowest, okay? So if we just look at our diagram, each measurement, that's 5 centimetres, that's 10 metres. So this could be 5 centimetres longer than 10 metres, or it could be 5 centimetres shorter. Same for this bit here, same for this bit here, okay? Right then, what is the least possible length of AB? So AB is from here to here. Well, we know from there to there, sorry, from there to there is 10, from there to there is 10, from there to there is 100. But all of these three numbers have been rounded. So for it to be the least possible value, we got to go for the lower bound. So that means they're all 5 centimeters shorter than what is given. So let's have a little look here. 10 meters is the same as 1,000 centimeters, okay? Times it by 100. 100 meters is the same as 10,000 centimeters, okay? Now, and then the other 10 meters, so that's this part here, is the same as, again, 1,000 centimeters. I've times it by 100. And all I've done to find the lowest possible value, the lower bound, is I've subtracted 5 centimeters off each one. So I'm assuming they're all slightly smaller, which is these numbers here. You didn't have to change it to centimeters if you didn't want to. Then what am I going to do? Well, to find the least possible length, I add these up, but I got to give my answer in meters. So I'll add them up, which gives me this number here, 11,985. But then to change that to meters, I divide it by 100, okay? You didn't have to change to centimeters here. You could have kept it as meters the whole time. But if you did keep it as meters, 5 centimeters in meters would be 0.05 meters, okay? Okay, I hope when you see the word volume, you don't think sound, you think everything inside the shape. Now this is inside a 3D shape. What makes it? This is all of this is a cylinder. So to find the volume of a cylinder, you find the area of the circle at the bottom or the top, bottom or top, times by the height. So how to find the area of circles? Pi times radius squared, and then I times by the height. So I'm actually going to do 3.14 times 3.6 squared, because it tells you there the radius is 3.6. Then I'm going to times by 9.3, because that's the height, and eventually that gives me the volume of 378.46 centimeters cubed. Okay, nice one for 2 marks. Every 1 centimeter cubed of baked beans in a tin has a mass of 1 grams. A portion of baked beans is half a tin. What is the mass of the portion of baked beans? So we need to use our answer from the previous question, because that was the actual volume. And if that's the volume in centimeters cubed, we've done it here, that's exactly the same as it in grams, because it tells you 1 is the same as 1. But we only want half a tin, hence I'm halving it. So my answer would be 189.23. You might be slightly out here because you rounded here, and that would be acceptable as well. Okay, next one, mathematically similar. So I'm hoping you think similar shapes. Baked beans has a radius of 4.2. So they've given us the 2 here. The radius of this new one is 4.2. The radius of the smaller one is 3.6. It told you at the top of the question. So you've got to find out how much bigger or how much larger is this shape compared to this one. And the only way you can find out how many times larger it is by dividing the longer by the shorter. It's called finding the scale factor. So I'll do 4.2 divided by 3.6, the larger length divided by the smaller. And that will give me my scale factor of 1.16 recurring. Bit of an ugly one. But now I know to get this 9.3 to this height here, I've got to multiply 9.3 by my answer, which was 1.16 recurring. Okay, so you can just leave that on your calculator ready, and that will give you the answer of 10.85 centimeters for the height. Not a bad one for similar shapes. Okay, if we want to find out which one has a greater proportion, why it's difficult at the moment is because obviously the numbers are a lot larger in terms of salt. Salt is 1.85 grams out of 6 grams, and this is 11.7 grams of sugar out of 90 grams. So the only way we can find this a bigger proportion is if we change them to percentages. So for the salt, I'd simply do 1.85. That's what we've got out of what we're allowed, which is 6. So I'm going to do 1.85 divided by 6, and then times my answer by 100. So as a percentage, that is how much salt is going to be in our baked beans, 30.83. I'm going to do exactly the same for the sugar. So I'm going to do 11.7 divided by 90. 11.7 divided by 90, times that by 100, which is 13%. So which one has a, so if we read the question, greater proportion, well, quite clearly salt has the greater proportion at 30.83. Third mark for explaining which one. All right, a little bit more we got to do on this one in terms of a bill question, but for 7 marks, I really do think we can get our teeth into it. So for June, she budgets for her electricity bill. The bill for the months of June, July, and August. So I'm hoping you know it's got to be 3 months. Her bill will have to be paid at the beginning of September. Her standing charge is £8. So we've got all this information here. All we're going to do is work our way through it. Calculate how much she should budget. What you know is her meter reading is now 20,150. She's estimating her meter reading is going to be 20,950. So you've got to start by finding the gap between them two to find out how many units are used. So I'd subtract the two. So I've taken those two away, and that tells me that 800 units of electricity are going to be used. Now what I do know is that it is 23p per unit. So I'm going to do 800, because 800 are being used. It's your first mark, times 23 pence. See here I've written in pounds though. Could do that at the beginning or after. That's going to give me £184. So be careful if you've got 184 and then 2 zeros, because you have to divide that by 100 to change it to pounds. That's your second mark. Now your third mark, which you could have done right at the beginning, is we know it's £8 per month standing charge, and it's for 3 months right here. So I'm going to do 8 times 3, which is £24. So you get third mark for £24. Well, the last bullet point says VAT at 5% of the total standing charge and the electricity used. So what am I going to do now? Well, I'm going to add on the 184 and the 24 and then find 5% increase. So 208 is going to get me my fourth mark. My fifth mark is for finding 5% correctly and added it on. If you're struggling, 5%, just write it as a fraction, 5 over 100. Okay, and then you can times that by the number and it will find it for you. So 5%, and then obviously is £10.40, but I'd have to add that back on. Okay, so that's another mark. £218.40p. That is the total charge. Okay. Now we've got to actually finish the question off because it says calculate how much she should budget each month. Well, we know there's 3 months and we know the cost here has got to be 218.4. So to find out how much you should budget each month is divide what you're going to pay by 3. If I divide that by 3, that's going to give me my answer of £72.80. That would cover the 3 months bill if you save that each month. Okay. All right, because this is compound interest, that means we have to find 2.2% at the end of each year for 5 years. So rather than finding 2.2% of 5 different numbers, okay, there is a quicker method which hopefully by now you can remember. Now, because it's an interest, that means we're making money. I would maybe write it slightly differently to this. This is if you're really confident with decimals. Okay, I'm going to talk you through what I would do. Because we know it's an increase, I know I've got to add 2.2 to 100% because we're increasing, which takes me to the nice number of 102.2%. Okay, so 102.2% as a decimal is this here, but you could have written it as, just for your calculator, 102.2 over 100. So all I've done is grab my percent sign and put it underneath. And then multiply that by the number in the money in the bank, which is 500. But don't forget, because we need to do this for 5 years, I raise it to the power of 5. Okay, so nice and simply in your calculator, you can make it look the exact same way. You don't have to put the brackets in there. I just put it there to tell you that, or to remind you that you must put the 5 outside the fraction, not on the fraction, times by 500. And then that's how much money is going to be in the bank, which, as you can see, is the exact same answer there. So that gets you the first 2 marks. But now, this is what's there after 5 years. It's now a new percentage for the remaining 15. So if it was my method again now, well, we got to add on to 100% because there's an increase, but this time 1.6, which gives me 101.6%. And now my working will just slightly change to 101.6 over 100. And then that would be to the power of 15. Okay, so just a slightly different way of writing it. Whereas Here we done it as a decimal. I write it as over 100. Okay, both methods work. So if your final 2 marks, it's going to be your method here, and then the answer is £707.34 in the bank. All right. Hoping you start to think, I'm at the back of a calculator paper, I can see triangles, right angle ones, and you're thinking Pythag or trig. Okay. Calculate the length of support 1. So support 1 is here. Here's your right angle triangle. You know 2 of the lengths, so I'm hoping again you think Pythag. Now it depends who your teacher is and what method they teach you, but if you want to find the hypotenuse, the longest length, it is always add. So that's what we're trying to find. If we weren't trying to find this one, we wanted to find one of the smaller lengths, we would subtract them. Okay. Now this has been written down as a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A and b are always your 2 smaller lengths. C is always your biggest. Okay. If I'm your teacher, then maybe I've just done your work in slightly different for you. If it was me, I would teach you to write the bigger number first, then the smaller number. Then remember the saying square, square, square root, and then you decide whether you add or subtract in between the 2, and we're adding because we want to find the hypotenuse. And you can type all that in your calculator straight away, and it will give you the answer of 1.42. Right, so for 3 marks, obviously using Pythag as 1 mark, using it correctly, add in as 2 marks, and your final answer rounded is 1.42 meters. Don't forget your meters. Okay, guys? All right. Now, what in this one tells me that it would be SOHCAHTOA or trigonometry, because it says find the angle. So that's the trigger, okay? That's the giveaway, guys. Support 2. So if you go back to your original diagram, support 2, it wants this angle here. It says between the horizontal ground, that's that part, and support 2. So that is what we want. So do we have enough information at the moment? Well, do we know the length of support 2? Yes, it tells you in the question it's 2.6. Do we know all of this? Yes, the 1.1 and the 0.8. So that's actually going to be 1.9. My advice, and I know you're already thinking it, would be redraw that triangle, which is what I've done. So now I can zoom in, make it a bit easier. If I redraw that triangle there, 1.9, 2.6, there's your right angle. It's all about SOHCAHTOA. Now, I would say label the hypotenuse first, then the opposite the angle given, then the adjacent. Write the word SOHCAHTOA, like so. And then out of these 3, which one will I eliminate? Well, A is the only length which has nothing on it, and we're not trying to find it. So if I eliminate A in the diagram, I eliminate A in the word SOHCAHTOA. So I know I'm using SO. Out of these 3, O and H I've got. S would always mean the angle, same with C, same with T here. So if I hide that or scribble it, I know I've got to do the opposite divided by the hypotenuse. The opposite is 1.9, the hypotenuse is 2.6. 1.9 divided by 2.6, but don't forget, you can't ignore the sine, the cos, or the tan. So if you can't remember in an exam, whenever you're trying to find the angle, just look above the buttons of sine, cos, and tan. You can see -1s. You have to then, only when you want to find an angle, use the -1 button. So it's in your calculator, type it the exact same way it's written there. It'll give you the answer of 46.95, which would round to 47 degrees. Okay. Quite a nice question for trig. All right. Mr. Jacob gets a quote £516 for building his wall. The quote includes 8 hours labour costs at £22.50 and then a 20% discount off. So they've already taken that off. That's the part you need to get your head around. That's where my 80% has come from. So the cost of the bricks, you haven't paid for 100% of them. You've paid for 80% of them. But I'll go back to that in a minute. The first thing you need to do is 8 times £22 because you work for 8 hours at that cost. So 8 times £22.50 is £180, 1 mark. Subtract that to get 336, okay? So 336 is the cost of the bricks, but remember, that is actually 80%. You've got to find out what they originally cost. So they would have cost a little bit more because we took 20% off. So 336 equals 80%. Now there's loads of ways you can do this now. I like to line it up and think, right then, if 80% is 336, if I halved it, I could find 40. Well, if I halve that again, I could find 20, because all you're trying to do is get it back up to 100. So 336 divided by 2 is going to be 168. If I then divide it by 2 again, Obviously, there are quicker ways. They give me £84. Well, how could I make 100 using these numbers? Well, 80% and the 20%, that's what we took off. 84 quid was the discount. If I add that £84 back on, that would give me 100%. So 336 plus the 84 can give me an answer of 420. Now, there are slightly different ways. I divided by 80 here to find 1%, and then I just times by 100. But whichever way you do it is going to work. £420 is your answer. Come on then, almost there. One big push. How many people does Kenworth Electrical employ? Circle your answer. Frequency means how many. So because this is their monthly wages, so to find out how many people they employed, all you got to do is add these up. 120 for the first one. In which group does the median value wage lie? So the median is going to be a halfway point. Well, if 120 people were asked, the middle person would be the 60th person along. So the first 64 people earned between £1,800 and £2,000 a month. Then the rest, which obviously is past halfway, earn more. So if you lined all of these people up in terms of the order of what they earned a month, the 60th person, which would be the middle person, would be here in the very, very first group. So that's 1,800 to 2,000. Alicia is an accountant. She knows the exact wage of each employee. She says it would be misleading to use the mean. So the mean is the average. So to use the average, you would find the midpoints, you times them and add them up. But why? Explain why Alicia has reached this conclusion. Well, if you just look at it here, out of 120 people, the first 114 of them, so apart from these 6, because you've got 2 there and 4 there, the 50 and 64, which is 114 out of the 120, so that's almost all of them, earned between 2,100, so I'm looking above my pen, 2,100 to 1,800. But then you've got these 4 lucky people, I should say, who earned way, way more. But because there's so many people here, the mean wage, if you worked out the mean, it would be really, really close to these numbers here. So it'd be completely misleading because you've got 4 people here who are obviously managers or somebody really high up who are earning a lot more. So as long as you explain that, I've obviously written something similar, but you've got 4 outliers. All right. For this one, cumulative frequency, if you can't remember, to help finish this part, it does give it away the question. At 2,200, they've plotted 48 people for you. So where did 2,248 come from? Well, it's the 8 people here, add the 40 people here, so the 48. So for the next one, 2,400, we've obviously got to plot the 8, the 40, and the 24. So we add all of them together, which gives me 72. Okay, because we're almost ignoring all of the inequalities on the left. We imagine they're not there. And then for the last part, 80 people, because I add on the 8 to the previous 72, or I add all of these together. Okay, so that is where these should be plotted. Be careful with your plotting here. It now says, which of the following is the best estimate for the median monthly wage of my stag? So for the median, it's going to be halfway of 80. 80 people were asked, so we go to 40 across and down. And as you can see, that takes me to 2 squares below 2,200. That's 2,000. So there would be 2,100. So it's going up in 20s. So it's going to be 2,160. Okay, to be really careful with your scale. And the last question on the back. Calculate an estimate of the percentage of MyStag Electrical employees who have a monthly wage of less than. So we need to find this number on our diagram, 2050. So here's 2,000, here's 2,100. 2,050 is obviously in between them. That's why I've drawn a line up here and across. So attention to detail needs to be really good. That from there is obviously, again, going up in 2s. So that there's got to be 18 people. So as an estimate, as a percentage, 18 people out of how many? 80 times by 100. 18 out of 80 gives you 1 mark. Times it by 100 then to find the percentage, we get your second mark of 22.5.